Okay. Housekeeping. So where are the keys to the person's house? If they're living alone, or if you're living alone, can anybody gain access to your home if they needed to? If you were taken to a hospital and you had clothing or a pet in your home or other documents that you needed to get access to, who can get into your home to access that? This is some just basic information, but when does your mail come in? What are your magazine subscriptions and newspaper subscriptions? What's your utility information? When are those bills due? If somebody needed to take over and start paying some of those bills on your behalf, they at least need to know the fundamental information. I have this situation with my mom. She lives in Arizona, and that's a 4-hour flight, right? And if I needed to get access to her home, I know who has keys. I don't have keys, but I know who does in her area that can open up the home for me if I needed to get in there. Okay, so it's a 4-hour flight and then an 1.5-hour drive. I want to know that when I get there, I can get in if I need to. I don't want to be, calling the police or figuring out how to get into her home. Insurance and licenses. So what types of insurance does the person have? Do they have long-term care insurance to pay, as we were saying, for private duty? Now, regular insurance is going to pay for palliative care or hospice care, but as we were discussing, it's not going to pay for what we call custodial care. And so that is when we need to know, does the person have long-term care insurance? What is their other health insurance that they have? Where are the policy numbers? Who issued those insurances? This is really important when it comes to life insurance. I did a similar presentation recently with a friend of mine that works for New York Life, and he gave some crazy statistic with the number of people that call New York Life on a daily basis, in the thousands, he said, asking if a family member has life insurance with New York Life. Just calling around, trying to figure out, did the person have life insurance? If you've been paying for life insurance at any point in your life, or if you still are, you want your family members to have that information so they can make the arrangements to get that insurance going if and when the time comes. So it's really critical. Licenses, again, driver's license, professional licenses, all these types of things that you want to be able to destruct if and when the time comes. Memberships and subscriptions, same type of information. It's basically canceling it out. Like my Costco membership, I have no idea when it's due. They just charge it to my credit card. Well, that's the type of thing that, it sounds so petty, but if you are no longer going to Costco for some reason, your family members need to be able to cancel that for you so you're not paying it on a yearly basis. Okay, your legal documents. So this is obviously super important. If you went through all of the work to create a will, a trust, a power of attorney, a living will, any type of documentation that falls into this category, your family members need to know where this is. It's just cut and dry. It's just so, so, so important. It helps with when the person passes away for the estate not to be held up in probate. It helps so that if somebody needs to step in and make healthcare or financial decisions with a power of attorney, they can. You can have 2 power of attorneys. You can have one for healthcare and one for financial decisions. That person who is designated only makes decisions while an individual is living. Once an individual passes away, the executor of their will or trust steps in. So the power of attorney ceases to exist. We bring up our families, but we had this issue with my father-in-law. I tried to tell them, my mother and father-in-law, many times to put a power of attorney together. You know, they're only in their early 70s, didn't think it was something they needed to be concerned about until my father-in-law was at 24 hours, was fine one day, and the next day was in the hospital with a brain tumor and never fully recovered. And at that point, he didn't know his name or his birthday, and he couldn't sign a power of attorney. And so then the doctors and the healthcare staff are looking at, you know, all of us saying, well, who's going to make medical decisions for him? And if that's established ahead of time, it really prevents a lot of angst for the family, along with family conflict.
What do you do if you don't have someone? I mean, I have a son, so that's fine, but I thought if I didn't have a son or he were in an accident, then what?
Then what? So you can designate a friend, obviously. A friend. You could designate a friend, but there are also people that are professional trustees. And you can designate a professional trustee to make decisions for you while you are living and after you have passed.
And how do you find these people and make a judgment as to whether they... I could tell you a long story about a dentist, but anyway, the point was I started out thinking the guy was an angel, and I found out otherwise.
Okay.
Telling me certain teeth were needed taking care of, and there was nothing wrong with them. But anyway, so how do you, is there an agency, do you call a law association or something? How do you make a judgment? Particularly for something as important as
Sure. So some banks
Okay.
have trustees, some attorneys, some retired attorneys, retired from law, may go into becoming a professional trustee. And then there are some individuals that maybe were an accountant, or some other related field and have transitioned into the field.
But
So,
again,
I mean,
how do you make a judgment? I mean,
you
what
have to
group do you
contact,
ask?
so you have to contact several different and interview them. So I would contact your bank, like if you have, or your financial institution, if you have a financial advisor, if you have an accountant, if you have a banker, those are good people to start with. I mean, I can connect you to some people as well. But you have to call them and you have to meet with them and you have to interview them, just like any other person that provides service to. Yes?
I think what I would be interested in is part of her question is, how do you know they're honest, is essentially what she's asking. Is there like a state group that certifies them or does background checks, or how do you know they're honest? Just going to my bank, I mean, people are arrested today in every profession for being dishonest, so how do you know they're honest?
Right.
If they are, quote, professional trustees.
Right. That's a good question to ask them, because I'm not sure what their governing body is. Many professions in the state of Illinois are regulated through the Illinois Department of Professional Regulations. I know, like my license as a social worker, when I was active, it's now an inactive license, but that was through the Illinois Department of Professional Regulations. So yeah, I would maybe start with them. You could go online or you could call them and ask them, is there any type of licensure or governing body? I mean, certainly if they're an attorney and they're a member of the bar, that's their governing body. So that would probably be where I would start if you wanted to find, or you could call the Chicago Bar Association, or I'm sure there's like the Illinois Bar Association. Those would probably be good places to start too. Military service documents, so discharge documents. If the individual is a veteran, it is so important to have those discharge papers to find out what federal and state programs they may be eligible for. Okay, and I've run into that situation where I was a social worker, where healthcare was very expensive for the individual, and the family member kept saying, well, we think, they were in the service for this amount of time. I'm like, well, I can send you over to the VA, but the first question they're basically going to ask is, where are the discharge papers? So if you know a veteran or you are a veteran, make sure that you keep this information accessible for your family and members and friends or whomever is helping you, so they can see what programs are available. And there are a lot actually for veterans. Okay, so financial information. I think this is as critical as the legal and healthcare information. You want to keep a detailed list, whether it's electronic or basic pen and paper, of your accounts and your passwords, the contact information for the individuals or financial institutions, for your banking information, if you have any other types of money markets or CDs or other investments, any online accounts. A lot of people have online banking now, or they have money market accounts that aren't actually at a physical, brick and mortar bank. What other, like I said, investments or retirement accounts, if there's college savings accounts, and any other pension information. So when I worked at Loyola for 12 years, I had a pension, right? But I left that job before I was even 40 years old. I'm not going to use that pension for probably another 25 years. But if something were to happen to me between now and then, I have beneficiaries on that, okay? So my husband, obviously, or my kids, or whomever else I'm designating to know this information, needs to have access to that. Because 25 years from now, they need to access that. Actually, if I pass away before that, they can access it sooner. But that's the type of thing that you forget about, right? I mean, 25 years goes by. There's actually a decent amount of money sitting there that I don't want forgotten, because I worked for that for 12 years. So that's the type of thing that can get lost along the way, as I was saying, with moving, downsizing, marriage, kids, divorce, a spouse passing. All these things happen to us throughout our lives, and this is the type of information that can kind of get misplaced or forgotten. Your real estate information. So real and personal property. So your personal property are your possessions in your home, your jewelry, your furniture, whatever it is. And we're going to talk about a downsizing slide in a few minutes. But what type of property do you have in your home? Whom do you want it to go to? Where is the deed to the home, the titles to the car, any property tax information and appeals? If somebody needs to take over a mortgage or selling a car, they're going to need that information. It's really, really, really important. Obviously, this isn't the most uplifting slide. We don't want to think about passing, but unfortunately, it's a fact of life. And having detailed information for your family members, if you have prepaid for any type of plot or cemetery, or whatever it is, having information about your where your birth certificate is, again, that's something that would probably want to be destroyed, or maybe a family member wants to keep it. There's a document called 5 Wishes, which talks about what the person wants at an end stage of life, so that their wishes can be met. And for some people, that's really important for dignity. So it's important to share that information as well. So what I generally do with people is help them gather up all of this information. It seems a little insurmountable when you look at that whole list, but it's really not. We can dig it all up and we can pull it all together. And how you want to store it, maintain it, and share it is a very individual decision. And again, I walk people through that process. Because if you've taken the time to gather all of that up, you want to make sure that the people you want to have access to this have it in a system that they can retrieve it. The important thing is too is you want to make sure you maintain it, because our information can change over time. We may close an account, we may open an account, we may sell a car, we may sell a property. So we need to make sure we're setting up a system as to how often you want to review your documents, how often you want to update them, how you're going to delete or shred documents, or just, there are also companies that will destroy them for you and provide a certificate of destruction. So we're going to talk about, in a few minutes, and on your handout, some resources that can help with this. I want to just talk for a few minutes about downsizing as well. There was an article recently in the, it's either New York Times or Washington Post, about how decluttering and beginning the downsizing process is so important for seniors to maintain safety in the home. Clutter is a tripping hazard. And so the more that we can work with people on taking out items out of the home and eliminating clutter from the home, the safer that home is, and hopefully that individual can age in place, okay? So it's important to start thinking about what items you might want to disperse out of your home, who you want to give those to. Do you want to sell them? Do you want to donate them? Do you want to gift it to somebody? Unfortunately, I come across a lot of situations where the item does not hold the same value for the current market as the person bought it for however many years ago. So furniture and china and other collectibles don't hold the same value that they maybe did 20 plus years ago. And that's kind of a hard realization for some people, but it is unfortunately the reality. And so we kind of have to educate people on what the value is for the various items in their home so that they can sell them for the most that they can in today's market. Like I said, furniture styles have changed. People aren't really buying china. They aren't buying the collectibles. The younger generations want different type of furniture. They're more transient. However, if you are selling any antiques, artwork, certain styles of furniture, like Baker furniture that is still in demand, or what's really hot right now is mid-century modern furniture. If you have any original paperwork for those items, that's another thing that you're going to want to keep in an organized format so that your family members or whomever, or you as an individual, can, when you go to sell those items, having the original paperwork is really important so that you can get the best value. Yes?
I have a relative that has some antiques. How do you find someone to sell antiques to?
So I might have a slide on this coming up. I kind of merged two PowerPoint presentations. But there are various dealers out there for certain types of antiques, furniture. There's consignment, there's auction. So there are various ways to
But again, it would be her question too.
How do you know?
They're honest.
How do you find the good ones?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the age-old question. I mean,
Is
it's
there
some...
an association that certifies them, or?
There are appraisers. There is an association to that they belong to, and I'm sure they have a code of ethics. For people who can appraise coins, there is an association for them as well, and it's a really long name. I don't remember exactly what it is, but there is a governing body for them as well. For other consignment or auction, I mean, they're in the business and they generally know what things go for, but they're not going to price an item if you paid $10,000 for a large piece of furniture, like a huge bookcase. And I did have a client that had this. It was Baker furniture, and he paid, I don't even know, some exorbitant amount of money 40 years ago. Well, the auction, might start the bidding at $500. And that's just the reality, like I'm saying, of, the market right now, for what you might want to sell it for doesn't mean that that's what the buyer is going to buy it for. I suggest sometimes people go on eBay and see what things are going for right now. There's an organization called Everything But the House. It's an online auction. And you can go on there and you can, select furniture or whatever other item, china or whatever, and see what the market is right now for that type of item. So there are some resources out there to help you. When you are starting to disperse items out of your home, You want to start early. You want to work in small chunks of time. It's really overwhelming to go through an entire home and start dispersing items. And so starting early, working in small chunks of time, having kind of a general timeline that you want to go by, a master list of all the items that you think you're going to kind of want to get rid of in various ways. Talk with your family members, see if they want things, or your friends, who do you want to gift things to? They may or may not want those items, but you can start a general conversation. Sometimes it's helpful to just clear a space to work in your home. If you're kind of purging everything out of a closet or a drawer, just clear a space. Start putting like with like to really get a sense of how much volume you have of certain things. We tend to forget over the years how much stuff really does accumulate in our home. So you just start pulling it all out and sorting it into categories. It helps to decide what you're generally going to be able to keep long term and what you plan to purge. This is where people get very overwhelmed. And if you can anticipate some of that and work through that with your family and friends, it really helps because you're going to start going down memory lane. Every item that you touch and every item that you see, it starts to bring back some memories. And sometimes people feel like, oh, I have to have the perfect day to get started, or I'm gonna start it this day because I'm gonna be feeling good, and I have a whole day marked for it. And I tell people, there is no perfection. You just got to get started. You just got to start weeding through things. The sooner, the better. There is no perfect day or perfect time. Any day or time you start, it's still going to be difficult. It's still going to be overwhelming and stressful. People have a really hard time purging items from their home. That's why I said this is not an easy process. People have an emotional attachment to the items in their home. Some people are don't make decisions well. They're very slow with making decisions or lack confidence. Sometimes there's the issue of where do you put everything while you're thinking about dispersing items in your home. Where do you store it? Is there a garage or basement or a closet or somewhere that you can kind of start congregating all of these things to? So I'm just going to give you a few more tips before the end of my presentation. In terms of deciding what to keep and what to potentially get rid of, 80% of the time we use 20% of what we own. And you can probably see this in your closet, right? 80% of the time you probably wear 20% of the same clothes over and over and over. And so you want to think about, what do you truly love and use the most? If you use it and you love it, keep it. If you don't use it and you don't love it, get rid of it. The gray area, or not on this chart, but the area where there's more discussion is whether you use it but you don't really like it, or you like it but you don't use it a lot. That might be china or some other type of family heirloom. And that's where a little bit more discussion needs to come into play as to how important that item is to you in terms of, if you get rid of it, your energy, your time, and your money to replace that item. On a scale of 1 to 10, you want to keep the items that rank an 8 or higher in terms of needing and using them again and their replacement value to you. Reframing your attachment to items is really important. Don't touch every single item. Try to have a family member or friend help you with this, because if you touch everything, you infuse your own sentimental attachment into that item. So it's really helpful to have somebody else with you and not touch every single thing. Trying to remember that your space is a living entity, and your space should reflect what you love and your values. And so if an item has lived out its time with you, it's okay to let it go. It doesn't mean it's any less important. It just means that it may not fit your current lifestyle. Creating rules for eliminating things is really helpful. So items, clothing you haven't worn in the past 12 months, or books or magazines that you haven't read in the past 3 to 6 months. Anticipating grief and recently seen regret is really important. So recently seen regret is if you forgot about something initially that was in your home, and as you're going through the decluttering process, you remember that you have it. So you're going through your basement and all of a sudden you come across this bread maker that you had, but you haven't used it in like 10 years. And you're like, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, this item really isn't that important to me. You know, in terms of money, time, and energy, I could always buy one again if I really, really wanted it. So I'm gonna purge it away. Okay, well, 6 months goes by and it's kind of like a, you know, gray, rainy day outside and you're like, oh my God, this is a perfect day to make bread. Why did I get rid of that bread maker? How in the world did I get rid of that thing? That's recently seen regret. You forgot about it for all those years, but as you went through the decluttering process, it came back to you. And now you're like, well, why in the world did I get rid of that thing? So if you can anticipate that ahead of time and know that, all right, it's not that big of a deal. I can spend $50 or whatever and drive to Target and buy another one or order it off of Amazon and have it delivered to my home in 2 days. Okay, that's the replacement value to you. So that helps people often make decisions about what to keep and what to get rid of. So this is some helpful resources that I passed out to you on your sheet. It talks about some great places to go for recommended reading. The next bullet point down talks about storing vital records, and these are there are so many options out there right now for storing some of this critical documentation that I talked about. And this is on your handout. And each one of these offers a little bit different features. So, you know, you might be more or less inclined to use certain one, but check them all out and see which one best meets your needs. For storing family health information, again, these are some great resources to try. If you want to use a password manager for all of the different accounts that you have and you want to share this with your family members, these are some resources to help you with that. And then organizing any other records and financial information, again, these are some great resources to start with. And like I said, they all have different features, and so you kind of have to look at each one and see what works best for you. The important thing is to use something, right? That's the thing I want for you to walk away with from this presentation, is just to understand how important it is to organize your home and declutter your home, and just looking into these various resources to help you get started with that. This is a couple of resources to help you with donating and recycling if you're looking for various resources to help you with either one of those tasks. And that's it. I want to let you guys know that I have worked in social work for a long time. I've worked in this field for a long time, and I just think that we spend our whole lives collecting things, buying things, loving things in our home and the people that come into our lives, and planning for retirement and for, you know, our heirs. And you want to honor all of that, and you want to take the time to honor all of that. And while some of these things seem like an overwhelming task, the end result is that it's honoring your life. It's giving a second life to the things you're ready to get rid of, and it's making your family members aware of what you have so that they can help you in those most critical times. Thank you. Yes?
Just kind of what you're doing, there was something in a newspaper article in the newspaper about a movement in Sweden called Decluttering.